Does Build Fellowship facilitate pathways to green cards or long-term visa options after the H1B period? Are there specific skills that people that you're looking for that have better approval rates, especially if I'm someone who's now going to apply for the Build Fellowship?
Individuals who to qualify for H1B, it's really the same as qualifying for our program. So at least a bachelor's degree is necessary. Of course, a master's degree is always preferable.
Do you want to give us a little bit more about the nuances of H1B cap exempt, the legal implications, and what are the things someone should keep in mind?
You can work full-time for a university, a government research organization, a nonprofit research organization, or a nonprofit that is partnered or affiliated with colleges and universities.
To what Danielle is saying, you need to find that employer. Either you have shown work, you're working for someone already, but you don't know how to begin, and that is where the Build Fellowship would come in.
If that is not a path that's realistic, we do have one other path with the Build Fellowship to do this with a benefactor. What that means, in the United States, you can never sponsor your own H1B. Unless you have an entity.
Does the fellowship help someone who wants to start their own company? Hi everyone, I am Priya from It's Ok Yaar, and today's topic is H1B cap exempt, but in the light of the Build Fellowship. And to talk about that, we have with us the founder and CEO of the Build Fellowship, Danielle. Welcome, Danielle. How are you today?
I am great. I'm so excited to be here, Priya.
Thank you so much. And for everyone who's listening, we were just catching up before the podcast. And I think the way Danielle's eyes lit up talking about what she's been building for 7 years, I can't wait to share that with all of you. But in this podcast, you will learn everything that you need to know about H1B cap exempt and the Build Fellowship. You know, we have created a lot of content on H1B cap exempt, but if you're new and you don't know what that is, it is H1B without lottery. However, as simple as it might sound, it comes with a lot of nuances. Danielle is the expert. So Danielle, do you want to give us a little bit more about the nuances of H1B cap exempt, the legal implications, and what are the things someone should keep in mind?
Absolutely. There's one way to look at cap exempt H1Bs, which is your full-time employment with 4 types of organizations that qualify in the United States as cap exempt. And those 4 types of organizations, I'll start by outlining because it's the basics, it's the 101 of cap exempt H1Bs. And you can work full-time for a university, a government research organization, a nonprofit research organization, or a nonprofit that is partnered or affiliated with colleges and universities. And folks can work full-time. If you can find a job full-time for one of these types of companies and you want to work for one of these types of companies, or organizations rather, you absolutely can get sponsored for a cap exempt H1B without the lottery at any time of year. But what I am here to talk about today is the fact that individuals who are trying to work for their own company or for the private sector in the United States, whether it's a large biotech company or a financial institution or, even a company that you are trying to get off the ground, you can actually be in a cap exempt H1B part-time. And then any US company can file a full-time cap exempt H1B concurrently on top of that cap exempt H1B. So you could go to a university and be a teaching assistant, and they could hire you and sponsor you for a cap exempt H1B for that work. And then your own entity or Google could sponsor you for a full-time cap exempt H1B without the lottery. And that's really the innovative, interesting piece about cap exempt H1Bs that people should know about.
That is so interesting because even I did not know about that. So help me just understand this from like just a very layman standpoint. So, there is a whole myth in the industry about the fact that H1B cap exempt means that I'm probably going to be working for a nonprofit. And in some cases, it's opening up that education institutions are a part of it. What you were saying is like if you are building your own company or if you're working for any other company, there is a way to start thinking about H1B cap exempt in those lines as well.
That is correct. And we it's I always hear this, that individuals think they have to go work for a nonprofit. Nonprofits themselves actually aren't cap exempt. It's nonprofit research institutions. They have to have a job to do research at that nonprofit, or it is a nonprofit affiliated and has a legitimate active partnership with colleges and universities. And the most common of these is to go work for a university. So individuals think, okay, if I go back to my alma mater and ask to be a teaching assistant part time, I can actually go and continue to go work at this company that I really want to work for. And that was people figuring out earlier before we existed here at the Build Fellowship. People were figuring out they could do that and work just part-time at a university and then go get a concurrent cap exempt H1B with
Do
their
full
own
time.
company
Yeah.
full time. Yeah.
So no, I think we have on It's Ok Yaar. Anyone who's following, you've heard about concurrent H1B, and I will link everything about H1B and concurrent H1B that you can watch. But I think the interesting piece that we are learning here today is H1B cap exempt can be concurrent. So you are doing one where you do part time, and then you can get your H1B cap exempt with whatever large
Right.
employer and do that. I think the most fascinating piece already, if you are 5 minutes into this discussion, is that for a large company, you can work on H1B cap exempt. And I think that's where the Build Fellowship comes in. So, Danielle, let's get into the Build Fellowship and your story. Like, where does Build Fellowship come into this place and how did you start building it?
Yeah. So, first of all, I grew up with an immigration attorney for a father. So, I learned all about H1Bs, L1s, O1s, green cards when I was very young, hearing about my father, Jeff, his clients at the dinner table. When I was always involved in immigration growing up, big part of my life, big part of my values, how I see immigrants in the United States and just how I see our workforce today and the importance of that. And really what drove me after college and starting my career in consulting to dive into the space and start our cap exempt journey was the change of narrative around the first Trump administration when families were being separated at the border. Jeff and I started Open Avenues Foundation. And there might be folks listening today who have heard of Open Avenues Foundation. It was the country's first cap exempt nonprofit model for a fellowship program. And we built the Build Fellowship out of Open Avenues Foundation. Jeff, my brilliant father and co-founder, actually started the country's first cap exempt model in 2014. And he worked with the government of Massachusetts. He worked with USCIS to develop the infrastructure for what it meant to work 5 hours per week, part time, for a cap exempt entity, and then work full time for a different company. And he built that infrastructure. It worked very well in Massachusetts out of a university being the cap exempt entity. But if anyone on this call knows anything about the education sector or working with government, it's not scalable to run a business or to run a model that you want to be able to, in this case, offer at scale cap exempt H1B positions to foreign nationals for part-time work. So that's when Jeff and I came together and said, let's use this foundation that we have developed to help foreign nationals who are being separated at the border. And let's partner with colleges and universities and become a cap exempt entity ourselves. And let's take the model that you started with GEIR in Massachusetts, and let's build a program where we can sponsor foreign nationals part-time for 5 hours per week for cap exempt H1B positions. And we will hire those individuals to train students at our partner colleges and universities. Wow. And we will enable them to be in our fellowship program part-time and in the US workforce full-time.
That is Fantastic and fascinating. So thank you for sharing the journey. And again, everyone who's listening, this is not this is my idea of making sure that we bring the best resources. So this is not like a paid partnership that I'm doing. So definitely calling that out. But let's get into the Build Fellowship. So how does it work? Like the Build Fellowship is now affiliated with organizations across the country. So when I join the Build Fellowship, do I join? Am I working for the Build Fellowship? Am I working for the nonprofit? Do I have the opportunity to do both? Can you help me understand how that works?
Absolutely. The Build Fellowship has a network of nonprofits that started with Open Avenues Foundation, which had hundreds
All right.
of foreign
Mm-hmm.
nationals come through that program. And now it's a network of multiple nonprofits that run Build Fellowship programs. And this is our way of scaling the fellowship beyond just one entity. We have partnerships with 15 colleges and universities around the country that are offering the projects, the programming that our fellows lead every week for 5 hours remotely to their students. And the foreign national fellows in our program are employed by those nonprofits to lead the education programming 5 hours per week with our partner schools.
That's fantastic. That's really good to know. And then how does so like again, I think I'm asking these questions because I'm pretty sure like anyone who's listening will have this too. So when you say 5 to 10 hours per week in these institutions, if
Yep.
I want to do like a 40-hour full-time job and I'm not interested in doing multiple, is there a path with Build Fellowship, or do you have tie-ups where we could make that happen?
All of our fellows work just 5 hours per week.
Okay.
And we knew when we built this program that every single one of our fellows was going to be working full time, and full time for foreign nationals who are in the fields that our fellows are in are working more than 40 hours per week in their full time jobs. They are really working so hard. We have fellows in our program working 80-hour weeks for their startups to get them off the ground. And we knew we had to keep our programming to 5 hours per week, with the foreign nationals having autonomy over their calendars and schedules, and they choose when they work with students because they're not teachers or professors. They are practitioners that scope projects within their field. A software developer scopes a software development project and leads that project with students maybe on Fridays at 4 o'clock on their time. And that's how these projects unfold and work for foreign national schedules.
Got it. Okay. That is helpful. I'll give you like a live situation of someone and let's talk through the Build Fellowship here. I am someone who is actively now looking for a job. I am in the workforce. Either I had a job and I'm looking for a new one, or I'm looking for someone to sponsor, or I'm an international student, or I am a spouse of an H1B visa holder without an EAD. Now I come across Build Fellowship and I apply for Build Fellowship. What happens? Like, walk me through the application process. What happens when you receive the application? What happens when they get approved? And then how does that journey begin?
Without a doubt, the most common cases for foreign nationals who come to us are those who are already employed by a company or have a company that is hiring them from abroad. They've been working as a contractor. They want to come to the US and work for the company that they've already been working for. Or it's a foreign national building their own entity, and they are able to, the foreign nationals have convinced their employer, or the employers sometimes seek us out to sponsor them with this unique pathway because they've lost the lottery multiple times. So the most common scenario, just so everyone who's listening is clear, is that folks are in OPT,
Yes.
or J1 or maybe L1, and they need to change status because they have lost the lottery multiple times or their current status is expiring. And that is when companies that foreign nationals have proven their value to, the companies know these individuals personally, they want to champion the individuals, and they come to us and say, let's move forward. And we have a timeline of about 2 to 3 weeks to do an evaluation on someone's eligibility for H1B and their case. Actually, we want to see that their case with their company would be approved as well, or else it's not worth moving forward with our program. And we do that evaluation, and then we move forward into a 6 to 8 week process to get an approval. We have a 99% success rate, really due to the due diligence we do upfront in that evaluation period. And once we get the approval, any US company is able to file their own cap exempt H1B immediately after we get that approval. And the foreign national can begin working full time for that company immediately without getting the approval even. It just needs to be filed. So we're really looking at about a 10 to 12 week process in our most common scenario. And I'm happy to pause there. I also want to talk about what happens for H4 folks or individuals who are
Yes.
coming who don't have employers yet.
Yes, I think that was anyway going to be my next question, because I think you beautifully explained that if I already have a job, I'm transitioning into a new country, or I'm on L1 running out of status. Like, we have so many of those folks who are like, lost their job, not sure what to do, time clock is running. This is the program where you get in, apply. There is due diligence up front so that you have a better idea whether this is going to get approved or not. And once that process is done, that person is ready to move into that H1B cap exempt. So this could be any situation if I'm getting it right. Like, I could be working for a large biotech company and my L1 has expired at this point and I need to move to a status. I go to build fellowship. I apply for the build fellowship. If I get selected, that biotech company can immediately file for my status, which is now going to move from L1 to H1B cap exempt.
And the key here is that the company has to partner with us,
Of
because
course.
when we moved away from Jeff's original model that depended on state funding and the university funding, we became reliant on companies paying for this fellowship program to keep and retain their foreign talent. And that is where it's been quite successful, because when foreign nationals have proven
True.
themselves through the OPT period and through the period of in L1 or whatever status they've been on, it's truly a no-brainer for many companies to do what it takes. The other point I want to make here is that we don't sit here. I'm not here to say that we at the Build Fellowship are plan A for anybody. We are plan B and sometimes plan C, because individuals will enter the US immigration H1B lottery every year. And if they are selected in that lottery, if they can wait for that lottery, then that is plan A.
Yeah.
Plan
That's
B,
always planning.
that's always plan A. And potentially an O1 for founders might be plan A, right? But for individuals who lose that lottery and need this program, that's when individuals come to us. And you must stay in the program in cap exempt H1B status to maintain cap exempt H1B with your full-time employer. So you do have to be committed to taking this plan B scenario seriously and actually spending those 5 hours per week. And the company will pay monthly for this program for as long as it's needed until an individual wins the lottery or gets their green card EAD approved. And this is really the most common scenario that we see, is this employer engagement and partnership.
Yeah, I think there are so many. I think you beautifully described that, because there are employers who have invested in you. You've been doing a great job and everything is happening. And you just now need to figure that out. Now, when I'm just going back to our own situation, we had a time where Darshan had to stop working because the EAD process was so long. And my L1 was rejected. I moved to H1. He had to get H4. And of course, like, he had to get out of the workforce, but his company really wanted him. Thankfully, once his EAD came, he moved back to the company. It took him a while, but I feel if we knew about this, for example, I think that would be the ideal case where,
Yes.
he can like get going and get started. But I think this is fantastic. Now, I think we'll go back to where this started. Like, now I understand how the Build Fellowship works. And I'm sure anyone who's listening now understands how the Build Fellowship works. If you have a job, if you are looking to change status and you are in a situation which is not ideal and not in your control, but your employer is ready to back. Now, what happens for spouses? And we have a large audience of folks who are on H4 who don't have an EAD, who are figuring out what to do. Like, what is the path for them? Does Build Fellowship have a path for them?
The path for folks who are in H4 is to begin pitching this program to future employers. Plan is my first response. Option
Nice.
one is pitch, pitch, pitch. You are here potentially, you are abroad potentially, and you might be networking and trying to find the right employer in the US. And part of the reason why employers won't invest in foreign talent that they really like is because they see these individuals, when H1B is their only pathway, as a high risk. They might not be able to retain them. They might not be able to bring them here. Clarity on an immigration pathway, clarity on those costs, clarity on how to negotiate the costs of the program right into compensation is very important. And it is, we have all these resources on our website of how to talk to your employer about the Build Fellowship, and what this looks like. It is an expense, and it's something that needs to be, you have to prove value to a company in some way or another, right?
Absolutely.
A random LinkedIn application is not going to be enough to constitute a company sponsoring you from an H4 on our program specifically. So it is about figuring out how to hustle and figure out ways to engage with companies in a different capacity before engaging them in the conversation about this program.
No, I think, go ahead.
I have one other option for folks. This is newer this year because we saw.
So before
Yes.
you cover that option, I think I just want to double down on what you just said.
Yes.
For all of the H4 visa holders who are listening, you watched content around volunteering, how to network, what to do, like how to get to the job force. This is how you apply it. Because again, to what Danielle is saying, you need to find that employer. Either you have shown work, you're working for someone already, but you don't know how to begin. And that is where the Build Fellowship would come in. So I just want to contextualize, like you've been consuming some of our content and taking advantage, but now is the time to put it to action and kind of get moving so that your career break doesn't keep increasing. So
Everything is about finding those champions,
yeah.
finding those people in a company who will champion you. And if that is not a path that's realistic, we do have one other path with the Build
Yes.
Fellowship to do this with a benefactor. What that means in the United States, you can never sponsor your own H1B unless you have an entity
Correct.
that is sponsoring you because of the employer-employee relationship that is critical with H1B. And Department of Labor regulations say that individuals can't pay for their own H1B. So we never have foreign nationals pay us directly for this fellowship program. It's always an entity. Very important for us for compliance purposes. Now, for individuals who are here and maybe a company says, hey, Priya, if you were in cap exempt H1B status, I would offer you a job and I would sponsor you for that concurrent visa, but I don't want to sign a contract with the Build Fellowship. But you can do it. You can do it. And that has happened too many times for us. So we came up with a solution, which is foreign nationals who want to do this on their own can have an entity that's in their, a friend's company, a family's company, any entity that believes in their future and their potential and wants to financially support the fellowship can contract with the Build Fellowship. And many individuals have their own companies that they're doing on the side, have a family entity that is an employer and is able to contract with us. And so that is a possibility to explore this benefactor route. It's not as common, of course, as our main model, which is we partner with an employer that is directly sponsoring an individual, but it is a way for us to help individuals who have a promise of a job, but that entity doesn't want to move forward with this program in partnership. And this is so important for individuals who work at Google, Apple, Amazon, these larger entities have very strict immigration programs and protocols of what they will and will not do. And I will tell you here, for 7 years, I have worked to pitch these larger entities every few months on how to partner with this program. And it's a very, these are risk averse entities. Like, we can't sit here and expect they're going to take these more innovative routes. So for folks who are at Google actually working in this benefactor route to get the cap exempt H1B status and then have Google go ahead and just sponsor the cap exempt H1B for them is a better solution.
Oh, okay. So because like once you have the H1B cap exempt, then you're just filing a concurrent H1B cap exempt. So then it doesn't matter to any of the big tech companies like to partner with anyone. They're just doing their individual cap exempt, and that could be anything. And the benefactor one could be the number of hours could be like 2, 3, 5, whatever the employer sees right, correct?
You got it. It's always 5 hours per week for us.
Always 5 hours. Yes, for you guys, it's always 5 hours per week. Got it. Now, I think, I don't know, like, and my understanding is that, the way the model works from a pricing standpoint, it's baked into with the employer. Is there like a range that people need to be aware of that you're comfortable sharing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our program has a lot included in it for employers. So what is included in this price is the cap exempt H1B, government filing fees, premium processing. It's the whole program that we put on with universities that actually trains students for future jobs with these companies, because the students are actually doing hands-on work that is related to the company, and ongoing immigration support community for our fellows. This is the pitch that I give to companies, because they have to know there's so much more value than just this is not sign on the dotted line, pay for a visa. This is an entire workforce development program and professional development program for foreign nationals who are working for their companies. Our price is $3,000 per month plus a $1,000 share of salary that goes directly to the foreign national. So it's actually not an additional cost, that salary. It's a portion of the total salary the company is paying, but it comes through us to the foreign national. So the cost to the company is definitely the $3,000 a month, but the $1,000 is a portion that is important for paying salary and staying compliant for the foreign nationals in our program.
Got it. So, and you say 3,000 a month. And again, that goes back to what you were talking about, option A or B, like 3,000 a month till you actually figure out like whether you get that actual lottery or something like that, or is it like an okay.
It is. Yeah. It is when you contract with the Build Fellowship and a company says, we are going to support Priya or Danielle in this cap exempt H1B program, they contract and they start to pay this $3,000 plus salary per month. And the individual is able to stay in our cap exempt H1B fellowship for as long as they need to. Once they exit, of course, the company does not pay for the program any longer. That's why we always say this is really a stopgap. We're a bridge. We're built to be here to make sure individuals like your husband, Priya, can make it and continue to work and add value to companies during these intermediary periods between temporary work visas and green cards, et cetera.
Got it. No, super helpful. And I know I want to go back to the application process and approval rates, because you mentioned the approval rates for the Build Fellowship is H1B cap exempt is 99%. So I just wanted to understand that how do you foresee, given the change in the immigration ecosystem, high scrutiny on H1B visa, like how do you foresee that change, or are you all deploying any additional measures?
Yeah. So we are definitely anticipating an increased risk of an RFE. We've already seen an uptick in RFEs. And so what we're doing is we're giving projected timelines that are a bit more extended and conservative. When we used to say, hey, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get an approval, I'm saying, let's add on an extra 6 weeks for any RFE responses, any issues that come along with that. And that's when people should come to us, right? We used to say, come to us 4 months before expiration. Now, I would like to see people 6 months before their expiration of their visa. That's how we're really going to make sure that we, are handling an increase in those requests for evidence. We might see more denials. We've only received, I can count on one hand the amount, actually less, for denials in our time doing this in 7 years, and every single one we refiled when the company wanted to, and it was approved. We've never had to turn anybody away from our program because they were denied. And that is something we'll continue to do. We will fight for people who face this increased scrutiny. And the last thing that we know we're going to see is an increase in compliance scrutiny and crackdowns, meaning there's going to be more site visits. Our fellows might actually get a knock on their door and say, hey, is this your office? Do you work from home? Do you work from here? What does this look like? And I just had a meeting with our 200 fellows yesterday to prepare them for that. And we've seen it before, right? I've seen this in the first Trump administration. I've seen it under Biden. But an increase in that is just worth preparing folks for. H1Bs in my mind aren't going anywhere. It's part of our legislation. What we have built is within the legislation. So I'm not worried about all of a sudden this program shuts down. But will we have to ride waves of increased scrutiny and some stress for folks? For sure.
No, and it's helpful. And I think just to contextualize it for everyone, it's not something that you have started just like that. You guys have been in the immigration space. The founder is an immigration lawyer. You all get it. You're trying to do it in the legit way possible. Of course, there will be ups and downs, but of course, you're planning and preparing for it. You mentioned 200 people. So can you talk to us about how many fellows have been a part of this fellowship? How many lives you all have touched, and what is the active pool right now?
Yeah, we've had more than 350 foreign national, maybe closer to 400 now, come through our program over the last 6 years. And actually, just in the last year, we brought on more than 150 of those foreign nationals into our program, meaning we've really ramped up our ability to scale and grow. This year, we're hoping to have another 200 fellows join the program. The reason the numbers fluctuate is because folks are in and out, which is our model.
Yes.
We want folks to come into our program and then leave once they have their next step. So our numbers every month shift in terms of the foreign nationals who are with us active. Right now, we have about 210 individuals who are actively in our program. We have some companies that have multiple foreign nationals in our program together because they've seen the value in continuing to do this for their employees.
No, thank you so much. And last few questions. I know I had a whole list of questions for this, but I think you have explained so many things beautifully that I think we have covered a lot of ground. Few things specifically, and I think I know the answer to it, but just to reiterate, are there specific skills that you're looking for that have better approval rates, especially if I'm someone who's now going to apply for the Build Fellowship? Do I need to be from a certain background that kind of helps with approval rates, or something you look into?
Individuals who to qualify for H1B, it's really the same as qualifying for our program. So at least a bachelor's degree is necessary. Of course, a master's degree is always preferable mostly because the coursework is more targeted in a master's degree program. And so it makes for a much easier comparison with what you're doing in your day-to-day job, as long as it's related to that degree. But we really do want to see individuals who have a strong specialty occupation link to their degree. That is how we make a clear case. And that can be across industries. I used to be here. If you talked to me, Priya, just a few years ago, I would have said we only work in STEM and business. But in the last couple of years, we've really opened this up, and we have folks in marketing. We have mental health folks. We have audiologists. We have lawyers. We are really expanding because there are really strong H1B cases to be made across industries, across fields. And we're willing to have these individuals come on because, and the really important piece to always articulate here, and I want to give space to it. The reason this all works is because all of our foreign nationals across all of these fields are training U.S. students at our partner schools. We are literally building the future workforce in this country. And that is why this model is ideally going to be received well in a Trump administration. What is more America first than helping companies grow with their current talent and training students that need these skills for our future workforce, which is becoming more technical, and
Yeah.
we need to bridge these skill gaps.
No, I think that's super helpful. And the last couple of questions are more FAQs because I think probably we have covered it, but just for everyone who's listening, it's even easier to digest. Like, does Build Fellowship facilitate pathways to green cards or long term visa options after the H1B period? My understanding is it's no, because you come in, you kind of do it for a short term and you get out. Is that correct?
It is correct, but I have signed many letters for individuals who are applying for an EB1 or national interest waiver, just to talk about their background, because while in the program, our foreign nationals are exceptional humans training students. And so I will stand behind any of our fellows in saying that they are leaders in this country who are doing who are experts in their field as trainers of students.
No, that's super helpful, and glad you called out the EB1 or the EB2 NIW, because I think so many people are in that journey, and good to know that it kind of adds to that profile. My
Exactly.
next question there is, does the fellowship help someone who wants to start their own company?
So glad you asked this, Priya. On January 17th, a new H1B rule was put into action, and what that rule says was really helpful for foreign nationals who are founders and want to do H1B visas. Now, we've done many in the past, even before this rule. Founders can sponsor themselves for H1B. You can structure this, and in another podcast, Priya, Jeff can come on and he does this all day long and can talk to you about how to structure a startup to do an H1B when needed. But really important in this new rule is that it says that founders don't have to own less than 50% of their company to sponsor the H1B. It used to be that founders were giving away equity so that they could sponsor H1B for themselves because they weren't yet qualified for O1, and it just doesn't have to be that way anymore. So right now is an amazing time as a founder before this rule potentially gets reversed, which could be a year-ish. If that's something the Trump administration decides to do, which it probably will, just because it's a Biden rule. And this rule is something that foreign national founders can take advantage of, can do our program for 5 hours per week, and your own entity can partner with the Build Fellowship, and we can sponsor and do this model for you as a founder. And by the way, Priya, that's an amazing pathway for an H4 individual who might consider starting their own company to have more control and autonomy over their immigration journey.
Yeah, it's one of our top watched videos. How do H4 start their own business? So now that there is a path, I think this will be super helpful. I'm glad we touched upon that. I know we were talking about some of the immigration trends. So while we are at the topic, do you mind sharing just top of mind? What are the things that you think might, like, any immigrant might just see come in or like change? And these need not be like, these are more predictions, I understand, but your thoughts around things that might change and things might stay.
Sure. So I'm part of a working group of top law firms across the country and State Department folks, and we all come together and talk about these trends. I just got off the call yesterday, so you're getting fresh. You're getting some fresh intel here. One of the things that was, unfortunately, it's not so positive, right? But this is something that people should be aware of, was really just the travel and consular processing changes. We have a lot of concerned leaders in the space about the way that the consular officers will be making decisions about folks who even have approved visas. And they're looking at things like, does your resume today match the resume from your recently approved visa when you're coming to get a visa stamp? Because if not, then maybe they weren't given the full picture of who you are. And someone was sharing that anecdote to say, we're not sure yet if it's a pattern, but we are looking out for these ways in which there's increased scrutiny of individuals, and people need to be prepared and have as much documentation with them when they travel as possible. The other thing, in a more, in this world of increased scrutiny and concern, is because of these ICE crackdowns, there's a lot of advice on folks to carry around copies of everything passports, I-797s, all of the approval notices, just being extra cautious. It's so sad for me to come on this podcast and say this right now, Priya. I don't want to live in a world where that is the sentiment of fear, but I have to say it because it's important for folks to have an awareness of the increased scrutiny. It doesn't mean that anything's going to happen, but it means you need to be prepared.
Got it.
And on a positive note, I've seen a lot of innovation in support for foreign nationals through AI and increased ways of giving tools to foreign nationals to be able to take autonomy, to have more autonomy over their application process, and minimize amounts of work that lawyers will have to do, which is really exciting. And there's people in my world and network who are just going to continue to create these more innovative solutions when we have to, and we have to right now. And so I believe there's going to be a lot more build fellowships popping up to create these types of pathways, and I'm excited to see it.
No, I think that's a great way to even end our podcast. But wanted to just close with two questions, like, how do I apply for the Build Fellowship? Can you leave us with that and talk to us a little bit about, have you all denied folks who applied for the Build Fellowship? How